the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? When our land is illumined with liberty's smile, if a foe from within strike a blow at her glory, down, down with the traitor that dares to defile the flag of her stars and the page of her story, by the millions unchained who this birthright have gained. We will keep a bright blaze on forever unstained, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free is the home of the brave.
Warm greetings, dear ones, and welcome to worship at Unity Church. Welcome to this time we set aside each week to help us find and keep our balance, to think about those things that matter most, to root out racism in ourselves and in the world, and to align our lives to integrity, service, and joy. As we reach out from the sanctuary, we too miss being together in person. Despite the limitations, we hope you will enter in as fully as you can. Light a chalice, speak, and sing along. Call out the names of those in need. Let worship have its way with you until we are together again. After the service, whether this is your first time with us or you've been here your whole life, you're invited to participate in a virtual Zoom coffee hour where we share a bit of our lives with each other and get to know one another more deeply. Stay for a few minutes just to say hello, or stay up to 45 minutes to connect in smaller breakout rooms. I would like to take this opportunity now to welcome our dear friend and colleague, Meg Riley. Meg has just recently retired as senior minister of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, our online worship, which serves over 1,200 incarcerated people who have been touched and transformed by our progressive faith. Meg now currently serves in a voluntary position as co-moderator of our association. And this is a job that she does because she is committed to furthering our faith in the public realm. And Meg, I couldn't be more thrilled to welcome you to this Sunday after the inauguration. If you would like to learn more about Unity Church and Unitarian Universalism, we invite you to participate in Finding Yourself at Unity today at 1 p.m. This week's 1-hour online class will share information about Unity's religious education for children, youth, and adults. The choice for the 2021 Unity Congregational Book Read is Breathe, A Letter to My Sons by Imani Perry. Perry's thoughtful meditation on race, gender, and the meaning of life explores the terror, grace, and beauty of coming of age as a Black person in contemporary America, and what it means to parent our children in a perpetually unjust world. Information about the book read and a discussion held on February 24th, along with details about all the offerings shared this morning, are available on Unity's homepage. Next Sunday, during a service entitled By What Authority, Reverend K.P. Hong and Worship Associate Rebecca Flood explore the crisis and question of authority at a time when the organizing structures of society no longer hold and nothing definite seems forthcoming. And once again, welcome to Unity Church.
To state the obvious, what a week. We still have work to do. So many are still suffering, and as we have experienced in our collective body, the earth is constantly shifting beneath our feet. Let us now take this moment to reground ourselves. The earth may shift, but we are pliant. We can move with it. We are strong. Come. Let us worship together. Sing with us in unison our hymn, number 30.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. Over my head, I feel gladness in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head, I see angels in the air. Over my head, I see angels in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
And now let us say together, in unison, hold fast to your dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to your dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, all covered in snow. Please join with us in a moment of silence.
Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the center of this and of every sacred community. We stand at the side of parents, teachers, and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, with those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental disability or addiction. We pray for our neighbors in prison, for those who care for family members in ill health, and those who are struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly and with curiosity and courage face their final days, and by those who rise above heartbreak to challenge oppression in all of its forms. We pray for those in harm's way, for the wisdom and strength of the leaders of the world, and for the people of this courageous congregation, as together we build. We live into our longing to embody and help to build the beloved community. Will you pray for me for all these we now name? We join Sherry Knuth and the other members of her family as they grieve the death and celebrate the life of her mother, who died last evening. We hold 99-year-old member Vivian Stone as she faces her final days in the care of hospice and her beloved friend, Dick Buggs. Vivian suffered a serious stroke last Sunday morning, and her only remaining wish is to go home. May her way be filled with gratitude, love, and peace. Godspeed, Mother Stone. We send healing thoughts and prayers to Nick Lewandowski, who is recovering from hip replacement surgery. The surgery was quite extensive, but Nick is recovering remarkably well, and the medical team expects a full recovery. We hold Lisa Carlson's dear friend Joanne Bloomberg, who is undergoing surgery this week as part of her continuing cancer treatment of soft tissue angiosarcoma. Lisa asks that we send Joanne positivity, love, strength her way. And we are thrilled to announce the arrival of one more Redeemer. Little Anna Lucy Newton came safely into the world last night at 10:30 p.m., born to Mark Newton and Brianna Jewel Newton. At just over 5 pounds, mother and baby are doing well, but will remain in the hospital an extra few days due to mom's preeclampsia. Older siblings Adam and Addie and grandparents Anna and David Newton anxiously await their homecoming. And lastly, we acknowledge all the currents of grief that flow around the world as lives are compromised or lost to the coronavirus. We are acutely aware of the many ways that communities of color are hit inordinately hard by the pandemic. Every day, both the danger and the grief grow deeper. May we each light a candle of healing, remembering those who we have lost, and in hope of healing for those who are ill. May the flames we kindle light our way as we make the road by walking it. And may we stand in compassionate solidarity with our neighbors here at home and all around the world. May they and may we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. And I now invite you to speak aloud or hold in the silent sanctuary of your hearts the names of those you would like to lift today in worship.
Please join me in a time of prayer held by words from the inaugural poet Amanda Gorman and words from Reverend Danielle DeBona, who serves as the chaplain to the board of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Amanda Gorman prays, "When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished." May these words be our prayer. And from Reverend Danielle DeBona, "It is a good day. Breathe. Take a breath and feel the weight of the world lift from your body. Remember that you survived. No, thrived. Find your deep soul, hold it in your hands, and thank it. Thank that soul for its protection and power. We have survived. We are not the same, yet we have survived. Battered and bruised, we have survived. It is a good day. Breathe, take a breath, and feel the weight of the world lift from your body. Let your heart be filled with peace. Let us each, in our own way, offer thanks to that which is most holy to you for its protection and love. Amen.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the mystery of the body, gathered
Good morning and a special welcome to the children and to the families who are joining this worship service. As we do, come a little closer. Find a place to sit if you are able, a little closer to your screen for this story. You know, not all chairs and not all seating is about sitting down. The captain's chair on the Starship Enterprise is not just a chair, but the seat of command and authority. And the chair of St. Peter at the Vatican isn't just a big chair, it is big, with a backrest that is more than 6.5 feet tall, and it is. But it's really a symbol of authority and truth. And when the Pope proclaims a new teaching at the highest level of authority, it is said that the Pope is speaking ex cathedra, meaning from the chair, from the seat of authority and power. When Rosa Parks refused to get off her seat, it wasn't just about a chair. It was about civil disobedience and challenging powers and authorities that were rooted in racism. A chair, a seat. Like when we talk about the sitting president, it's not just describing the president sitting down in the Oval Office. It's describing the office of authority and power. And so, about 2,500 years ago, the ancient stories speak about Prince Siddhartha Gautama, who took his seat, but not on a throne, not on some ornately decorated chair. He took his seat on the ground, under a tree, and he decided to meditate and not get up from that seat until he had seen the truth of who he was, his identity, his truest being. For you see, he had grown up sheltered, surrounded in a palace by a wall that his father and others didn't want him to look beyond. He sat down because he suspected that there was a larger truth than what he was taught to see inside the palace walls. That some people were superior while others were inferior. That some people were deserving while others undeserving. A delusion that Siddhartha Gautama suspected created much suffering in the world. So he took a seat and he wanted to touch the ground of truth. As he meditated, layers and layers of delusions started to slip away. Delusions how, like some people were taught very early on to work, while others were taught only to eat, or given ownership of land that was not theirs to begin with. Of how some people lived so exposed to illness and hunger, while others had more than enough, and if they didn't want to be bothered with troubles and difficulties, they could just look away. But Siddhartha Gautama took his seat and he refused to look away. As he meditated, in the hours between dark and dawn, he came face to face with the demon named Mara, who rule the world by greed and hatred and fear and delusion. Mara came and decided to attack and throw every form of attack at Siddhartha so that he would get off his seat and stop his meditation. Mara attacked Siddhartha's fears and doubts and insecurities, attacked Siddhartha with temptations and all forms of distraction, so that Siddhartha would not awaken to the greater truth. Because Mara ruled the world on a throne built on deceptions and decorated with lies. After every attempt failed, Mara approached Siddhartha with a final attack, whispering into Siddhartha's ear, "Who do you think you are? Get up from your seat and go away. By what authority? What gives you the right to say that you see better and truer than the rest of us?" And Siddhartha, without speaking a word, without arguing or defending, reached down and touched the earth. That the authority and truth didn't come from any throne, but that it came from the earth, the ground itself. And that if we can see like the earth sees, to see with innumerous eyes of all of the earth life forms, in all the diversity and complexity of living beings on this earth, if we could see with all of those eyes, then we would see truly. And when Gautama Siddhartha touched the earth shook and spoke. "I bear witness that Siddhartha has awakened." And with that, Mara and delusion disappeared. As the morning star rose in the sky, Siddhartha Gautama awakened as the Buddha. And so may we. Amen.
Your support of the church is an expression of the promises we make to each other and to the world. Though the future is unclear and we can't let fear undermine the strength of the ministry we share, please do your best to be generous with the church so the church can in turn maintain our staff and programs and keep our promises to the many community partners our Sunday offering support. Today, the larger portion of our offering will be shared with Help at Your Door, an organization providing homebound individuals from all income levels access to competitively priced food and personalized delivery. This collection will support outreach to clients, including help with food needs and access to items critical for pandemic survival. During the interlude, please visit Unity's homepage or follow the link in the YouTube information section to contribute to the offering. You can also mail in a check or use the Give function in Unity's membership app. Thank you so much for your ongoing generosity to the ministry we share.
The reading is excerpted from a poem on Adrienne Marie Brown's website entitled, "What is Unveiled? The Founding Wound." The founder's wound is the myth of supremacy. This is not the first wound or the last. We are a species before we are a nation, and after warriors, organizers, storytellers, dreamers, all of us are healers. The healing path is humility, laughter, truth, awareness, and choice. A scab is a boundary on territory between what is within and what is without, where the line has been breached. Stop picking at the scab. It slows the healing. Until we are dead, and even when we are exhausted and faithless, we fight for life. We are our only relevant hope. We are our only possible medicine. A body is always a body, wounded, festering, healing, healed. We choose each day what body we will shape with the miraculous material we're gifted. Let us finally attend to the wound. Let us finally name the violence. Let us finally break the cycle of supremacy. Let us finally choose ourselves whole. Let us finally love ourselves whole.
I've been immersed in a play of late. It's Lorraine Hansberry's Les Blancs. Les Blancs is French for the whites. Hansberry is known mostly by being the playwright of A Raisin in the Sun, which is produced everywhere in the world. And coincidentally, Lorraine Hansberry is the subject of a compelling biography by Imani Perry, who is the author of Unity's book read this month. Les Blancs was her last play, produced posthumously on Broadway in 1970. It's set in an unnamed African territory or country under the rule of European white settlers during the mid-1960s. The play was controversial and divided audiences into two camps. One that felt it essential and spoke the truth about our country's racial divide, and the other who dismissed it as bunk. Sound familiar? The story, in Hansberry's brilliant conceit, depicts a complex intersection of family, identity, fealty, betrayal, religion, and love. The characters are flesh and blood human beings, white and black, each recognizing that this transfer of authority has many lasting and deadly implications. It is violent, it is noisy, it is horrific. And for one black playwright, after viewing a streaming of the 2016 London National Theatre production last July, black audiences, she said, should have been cautioned before being presented yet again with another image of the brutalization of black bodies, especially after George Floyd's murder. She asked, what is the impact on the psyches of black artists and audiences if we reiterate and are complicit in the currency of putting black bodies on stage? In what racial trauma are we trafficking? These words stuck with me when I read Adrienne Marie Brown's poem. To witness the vicious and cruel attacks on black bodies as many times as we have in the last few months has led us to a reckoning, and we are accountable for restoring the authority of our black and brown and indigenous bodies to the owners of those bodies. But being flesh and blood humans, we are all vulnerable. As Brown writes a little earlier in her poem, we live on a resilient earth where change is the only constant, in bodies whose only true whiteness is the blood cell that fights infection and the bone that holds the marrow. Yes, I understand that Brown is using the body as a metaphor for the country, but I think she's talking too about our physical bodies. We, she says, are a species before we're a nation, she writes. And that spectacle of crazed, heaving, mostly white, mostly male bodies rampaging up the steps unimpeded, another sad irony, through our Capitol 2 weeks ago, is all the more frightening because they were using their bodies in service of doing harm to property, to other bodies, and to this country's sacred values. And they believed they had the authority to do so. The thing is, however much we were repelled and disgusted by the images of those bodies perpetrating violence on other human beings, they too belong to our species. From what we could see, they are warriors only and have forgotten or maybe never learned the part about being organizers, storytellers, dreamers, and healers, and that the healing path is humility, laughter, truth, awareness, and choice. Who or what gave them the authority to deprive us of that? A new national anthem by Audre Lorde. The truth is, I've never cared for the national anthem. If you think about it, it's not a good song. Too high for most of us with the rocket's red glare. And then there are the bombs. Always, always, there is war and bombs. Once I sang it at homecoming and threw even the tenacious high school band off key. But the song didn't mean anything, just a call to the field, something to get through before the pummeling of youth. And what of the stanzas we never sing? The third that mentions no refuge could save the hireling and the slave. Perhaps the truth is, every song of this country has an unsung third stanza, something brutal snaking underneath us as we blindly sing the high notes with beer sloshing in the stands, hoping our team wins. Don't get me wrong. I do like the flag, how it undulates in the wind like water, elemental, and best when it's humbled, brought to its knees, clung to by someone who has lost everything. When it's not a weapon, when it flickers, when it folds up so perfectly you can keep it until it's needed, until you can love it again, until the song in your mouth feels like sustenance, a song where the notes are sung by even the ageless woods, the short grass plains, the red river gorge, the fistful of land left unpoisoned. That song, that's our birthright. That's sung in silence when it's too hard to go on. That sounds like someone's rough fingers weaving into another's. That sounds like a match being lit in an endless cave. The song that says, my bones are your bones, and your bones are my bones. And isn't that enough?
What a week we have had together. What a month. What a year. What a roller coaster of fear and joy, anger and hope, dread and eager anticipation, boredom and overwhelm. And here we are, gathered from our homes across Minnesota and indeed the world, sharing this sacred time together, remembering once again that we are a people with power and mission. As Reverend Danielle DeBona reminded us in the words I shared earlier in prayer, we have survived. Of course, not everyone has survived this time, and many of us here this morning are grieving losses from the year, living with gaping holes in the fabric of our lives. Many of us have only begun to unpack the pain and trauma we carry, only begun to remember that we are healers, that we are our only relevant hope, our only possible medicine, as Adrienne Marie Brown tells us. But here we are, we who have lived to draw another breath, we who can ask ourselves once again, how do we dare to be powerful as we do our work? What is our work, anyway? When I'm in need of a compass for the work, I often turn to words from Dr. Mark Morrison Reed, known and beloved by many in this congregation, which can be found in the back of the blue hymnal. He writes, "The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind us each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice." He goes on, "It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Together, we can dare to be powerful." It's such a pleasure to be here today. And I have to say, really unusual. I have preached from nowhere but my dining room for the last 9 months. It's really wonderful to be in this beautiful, familiar space with beloved people, new and known. And it's a treat to be with you as you gather, as we remember who we are again. When I was asked months ago to speak with you on the Sunday after the inauguration, asked before the election results were known, about our authority and our responsibility to do the work regardless of who is in leadership, it was this quote from Mark Morrison Reed that I thought of immediately. The work of unveiling the bonds that bind each to all as our sacred work. The work that endures eternally when we are in religious or spiritual community that is powerful and regardless of who else claims power. And yet, at the time I agreed to come, that phrase, "no matter who is in leadership," was a frightening one. Because although the purpose for religious community of binding each to all indeed spans generations and circumstances, our leadership over the past 4 years has seemed to claim as its own central mission to destroy the bonds that bind us all. Indeed, as we begin this new chapter together, we are a profoundly divided nation. And yet, divided though we be, we are, as we were reminded just last week from this pulpit, the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly, King reminded us, affects all indirectly. I don't know about you, but one of my central struggles these past year has been connecting with people who have such profoundly different beliefs from me that we have had no common set of facts with which to connect in any kind of meaningful dialogue. I remember in 2017, I was driving on a solo cross-country trip and stopped into a diner. Sitting at a breakfast counter, which was weirdly besides me, all white men, I was riveted and horrified when Fox News declared that separating immigrant children from their parents was nothing new, and Bill Clinton had been doing it. It's been standard practice for decades. I thought I said under my breath, "No, he didn't. No, it isn't." But it turned out I could be heard. And the man next to me heard me and began a diatribe about pizza parlors and pedophilia and other things. I had no idea what he was yelling at me about. All I knew is that I threw a $20 bill on the counter and fled, and wondered what would have happened if I weren't an older white woman. But Dr. King insisted on that mutuality, that connection, in a life lived day after day in situations much more dangerous than I have known. Visiting Montgomery, Alabama last year, I was struck again by how close together everything is. Dr. King's Dexter Avenue Baptist Church is 2 very short blocks from the Confederate White House where Robert E. Lee was inaugurated, and the Alabama Capitol stands where the Constitution still declares that the purpose of the government is to uphold white supremacy. Now, as we know, Dr. King's efforts to unveil the bonds that bind us were not about polite dinner conversations and dialogues. Demands for justice during the civil rights movement unveiled the bonds between black and white people, but not all were willing to see. Not all will ever be willing to face painful truths. Not all will sit under the tree, as Siddhartha did, facing the demons. And yet, we join millions across the globe who do struggle, who do face the truth, who do make it clear that none of us are free until all of us are free. When we dare to be powerful in these troubled times, we will take clear and decisive actions from clear and decisive commitments for the liberation of all. Last summer, my spouse and I drove home on back roads from Lake Superior across miles and miles of beautiful Wisconsin land. 2 older white women, we were terrified and wondered how it would feel for others with less privilege. We were stopped by the police in what was clearly a preposterous speed trap, and we watched endless numbers of other cars pulled over too. And mile after mile, we saw sign after sign and flags bearing the name of the man who was then president. Some of them had profane things to say to people like us. Some of them linked him to Jesus or God. We saw about the same number of Confederate flags and signs for Joe Biden. I kept thinking that should we sit down with the people who lived in these houses, I could not conceive of words to cross the gulfs between us. The trip became excruciating. Eventually, we returned to the safety of South Minneapolis, where many of the yard sport signs about justice for George Floyd state that Black Lives Matter, that love wins, signs for Ilhan Omar and Biden and Harris. And I breathed easy again, even as I knew that the people in rural Wisconsin would feel just as alienated here as I had felt driving through their homeland. It's because of my absolute inability to even imagine how to cross the gulfs, not of different beliefs, but of different sets of reality, to find shared common ground in what I consider objective, measurable truth, that I began watching TV shows and reading all I could find about cults. Perhaps I've been a little obsessive about this. My 24-year-old, who's come back home because of COVID, has forbidden me to even utter the word Scientology anymore. But I have found that this research is an important path for me as I contemplate how to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. I read about the new to me concept of identity fusion and what happens when the identity of followers fuses with the identities of leaders, particularly authoritarian leaders. Jack Dovidio, a professor of psychology at Yale University, concluded after a study that, quote, when you fuse with a leader, you are prone to abandon the values you had in a past life and engage in extreme actions in support of that leader. I have watched dozens of shows and read endless blogs and articles about Rajneeshis as Scientologists, Moonies, Nixums, that cult that came to attention as a sex cult, though it was much more than that, and QAnon. What I learned from this weird obsession and hearing the stories of hundreds of people who have been in cults and left them is that in most cases, the people who go into them do so for 2 reasons: to find the people with whom they belong, a place where they belong, and in some way to make the world a better place. Exactly the same reasons Mark Morrison Reed lifts up for us to come together in religious community. exactly the same things we all, as vulnerable humans, need and want. No one is welcome to a cult with descriptions of the weird things that we on the outside hear about and fixate on. Nobody hears immediately about lizard people or reincarnations of Christ or billion-year contracts or sex brands or all of the other weird and horrible places that people in cults are eventually taken. No one is told that being there will cause them to take actions they could never have imagined, cutting off their family members, giving money they don't have to the cause, holding radical beliefs, and in worst-case scenarios, hurting or even killing others. Initially, for people, this new place of belonging feels wonderful and affirming and joyful, and the sense of collective power convinces people that they are the saved. And part of why it's a cult is that the belief is that everyone else is damned, is wrong. It's only over time, when the individual self has been demolished and replaced by fused identity with a leader, that a great deal of shame and self-doubt and unhappiness takes over. Because to stay in a cult when it is no longer joyful or fulfilling, you must be convinced that, as painful and hard as that is, you are in the only place in the world where people are saved. And if you leave, you will be with the damned. No matter how bad you might feel about yourself, you are in the best place you could be. So you do what you need to stay there, no matter how extreme those actions might have seemed to you before. Now, in the cases studied by Dr. Davidio with authoritarian political leaders, the extreme actions may be violent political ones. In other cults, they may be self-harming behaviors. So many describe when they left unimaginably painful things that they did. Learning about this has made me tremendously grateful that in one of my vulnerable times in life, I never became entangled in one of these places. I've understood more clearly that because we are vulnerable, there are times when any one of us desperately needs to feel that we matter enough to make sacrifices which we wouldn't make other times. Some of us have given ourselves away similarly with substance addictions or abusive relationships or other behaviors that diminish our lives, but that feel like a lifeline at the time. And while the other cults I've learned about have no impact on my life, as horrifying as they are for the people who become entangled in them, for all of us, this strange cult with the mystery leader known only as Q, QAnon, suddenly matters tremendously to us all, a nation. We saw many people with Q flags and Q hats and T-shirts at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Lia introduced me to Audre Lorde and her poem about a new national anthem. Like Limon, I have never cared for the national anthem. While she says she does like the flag in the poem, I never have. I think it started when I was a young adult and a counter-protester literally hit me over the head with one at a peace protest. And yet, on Inauguration Day, when Lady Gaga stood in her enormous red skirt and enormous eagle pin and sang with her even more enormous voice, and she paused dramatically and looked skyward at the top of the flagpole as she sang that our flag was still there, I wept. As the comedian Stephen Colbert said, that song was never a cliffhanger before for me. But suddenly that flag stood as a symbol of unity for me in a way it never has before. Suddenly I felt it, as Limon described, humbled, brought to its knees. Suddenly, as she said, I could love it again, and the song in my mouth felt like sustenance. I could tell you more than you want to know about QAnon, but the precise content of any cult's beliefs are really not the point. The point is that every one of them creates a people committed beyond reason to saving the world in precisely the way its leaders instruct them. QAnon creates a people, numerous articles have told me, using techniques that computer games use, bonding people together to solve puzzles so they feel smart and empowered when they discover the precise conclusions that have been laid out before them, feeling that they are the ones who can save the world. As someone addicted to some pretty stupid computer games over the years, I understand the allure of dopamine well. And solving big problems in a team of people gives me a rush like nothing else. So I can well imagine how the people become committed and altered and ready to do anything to stay in that group. I could tell you about QAnon, but my time is limited, and I would rather talk about Unitarian Universalism, to talk about what we will do in these coming weeks and months and years, to wonder with you what it would be like to boldly offer the journey and companionship of Unitarian Universalism as an alternative for the people who find cults, who are looking for places to solve with other people the genuinely huge problems that need solving, to be present and welcoming for people who have been scarred and scared these past years by hateful policies and practices, to offer our full love and support and commitment to those committed to unveiling the bonds, including this nation's founding wounds of white and Christian supremacy, to facing those wounds and still touching the ground, still staying in our bodies, still fighting for life, still finding a love that is larger still. Now, don't hear me wrong. I'm not suggesting that we create a religion that meets halfway with Nazis or neo-Nazis. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have values, we have a radical alternative that provides a great deal of what people are looking for. We don't know everything, but we know some things. There's plenty that's imperfect about Unitarian Universalism, and unlike cults, we're allowed to say so and to work together to create the faith communities we dream about. Our leaders, unlike authoritarian leaders, never pretend to have all the answers, but journey with us, profoundly human. We ground ourselves in what is holy, touch the earth for strength, cherish poetry and song and one another. We find new sacred texts regularly, knowing that revelation is not sealed. We don't dissolve our individual selves and fuse with our leaders, but this faith does call us to radical transformation as we understand more each day how we are part of an interdependent web, how we are connected to all, how none are saved unless all are saved, none are free unless all are free. We don't offer easy answers. You're the church that proclaims on your bumper sticker, it's complicated. We are a reality-based faith. This is a great deal to offer people who are looking for a place and people to work with to try to redeem this beautiful, broken planet. This is a precious, life-saving faith. We know that we are more powerful together. We know that we need more stories because the dominant narratives are too narrow, and we especially need stories and perspectives and wisdom from people on the margins. We know that we need spiritual practice to ground ourselves in our breaths, in our bodies, on the earth. Touching the earth, grounding, won't bring us enlightenment, perhaps, as it did for Siddhartha. Perhaps we will not become the awakened one, the Buddha, but we might find a moment in which we can see clearly and move forward another step. And we have humility because we know that our truths, precious though they may be to us, are partial, and that future generations will know things we can't. We're not the only ones. We know it's not we're the saved and everyone else is damned. We know we are all in it together. It feels urgent to me to imagine what we might do with our power, how we might find songs together that are our birthright, sung in silence when it's too hard to go on, how we might create a community so strong that we know, in the words of Audre Lorde, that my bones are your bones, and your bones are my bones, and that is enough. Please join me in singing hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment.
From the night of days remembered, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the light of days remembered brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
A body is always a body. Wounded, festering, healing, healed. We choose each day what body we will shape with the miraculous material we're gifted. Let us finally attend to the wound. Let us finally name the violence. Let us finally break the cycle of supremacy. Let us finally choose ourselves whole. Let us finally love ourselves whole.
In the time of change, I'm a pressing on. I've got to move for the break of dawn. I'll not look back, for I must tell some when the change will come, when you don't look back, certain times gone by, he'll deliver you if you will but try. He'll stay pressed right on before he'll see you through. And when changes come, he will stick by you. A change has gotta come. It's sure a prophet song. We must accept the new day. With God I'm pressing on. He'll stay by my side. 'Cause he's been so good to me. He showed me how that a change will set me free. I'm pressing on. Yes, I'm pressing on. 'Cause some changes